Let's take a deep dive on a really simple sticking, and by the end of this lesson, I promise that whether you're a beginner or an advanced player, you're gonna have loads of material to work on. Right, so the sticking is going to be, that we're starting with, is kick, kick, right, left, right, left, right, left. Just 8 notes. I'm actually thinking of this as 2 separate stickings, and that will become important here in just a little bit. So the 2 kicks, and then the right, left, right, left, right, left, because we're gonna change that second part around a little bit, okay? So essentially, the sticking goes like this. Simple, right? Okay, what I want you to get from this, I'm going to be talking about a lot of things that I use in my teaching with all of my students. I'm going to be talking about things like chunking, assembly lines, feedback loops, and several other different things. Zoning around the drum kit, don't worry. Very simple concepts that will help you work through the material in a really systematic way. The first thing we want to look at is our assembly line. An assembly line is simply a logical system that you use to work through a sticking or a pattern or a groove. What's cool is we can duplicate it with other stickings that we come up with so that the system stays the same, but we're able to work in depth on the material. So our assembly line, step 1 is going to be learn the sticking with no click. So we're just gonna loop that kick, kick, right, left, right, left, right, left. Now, it's really important that we don't use a metronome to start. That will allow us to speed it up and slow it down to adjust for the actual sticking. Step 2 of this assembly line, remember it's a structure, is we're going to put the sticking with a metronome and we're going to add a measure of a check pattern in there. Now, we're going to throw a little curveball here. We're going to put this sticking with sextuplets, an 8-note sticking over a 6-note subdivision. So we're going to play that sticking 3 times within a bar of 4/4. Now, let's put that to a click. This will be a little faster than you would actually start it. And I'm gonna put a check pattern there. The check pattern is simply a measure of the subdivisions that we're working on. It's gonna be sextuplets. So a measure of alternating sextuplets in the hands, and that will help us check the timing against the pattern so that when we go into the pattern, the timing stays the same. So it'll sound like this. And we go back into the check pattern. Now I'm gonna put that with a metronome. Remember, step 1, we don't do that. Step 2, we do. 3 and 4 and. So far, we've talked about 2 concepts that I teach all of the time. One is chunking. We have a chunk of kick, kick, and then we have that other 6-note chunk, right, left, right, left, right, left. We're gonna mess around with that here in a few minutes. And now we're working on our assembly line. Step 1 is going to be learn the sticking with no metronome. Step 2, put the sticking with a check pattern, and then we're gonna put it with a metronome so we can smooth out any timing issues. Step 3 is where this starts to get fun. We're gonna move this around the drum kit. Zone 1 essentially is going to be floor tom and snare drum. Zones are just a way to cut up your drum kit. This isn't like a genius idea. You can look back to Gary Chester did this in his book, The New Breed. He liked to break up the kit into different zones. So I'm not like reinventing the wheel here, but these zones are those zones that I teach to help you learn things. You can make up as many zones as you want. For this lesson, zone 1 will be floor tom, snare drum. Zone 2 is snare drum, high tom. Zone 3 is floor tom, high tom. Zone 4, hi-hat, snare drum, and zone 5 is ride cymbal, snare drum. So what we're gonna do for step 3 of this big picture assembly line, the system we're working this sticking through, is we're going to move the sticking to zone 1. The easiest way to do this is simply move one hand. Don't get fancy at first, fancy will break things. Just move one hand. We wanna make it the very simplest movement that we can. And this will help our ear get accustomed to hearing the new sound source with that subdivision. For this, I'm just gonna loop the sticking that I've been working on. I'm gonna take away the check pattern. 3 and 4 and. After I've worked through my first idea there, then maybe we can come up with another one. So still using zone 1, but now maybe I'm gonna do this. Just slightly different, but a variation and still within zone 1. 3, 4. We could come up with another variation. So now we've worked it through zone 1. We've got 3 different iterations of that. After I do that, I'm going to move on to zone 2. Zone 2 is the high tom and snare drum. Now, it doesn't matter if you put the right hand here, left hand here, dealer's choice, okay? Step 1, learn the sticking. Step 2, sticking with a check pattern and metronome. Step 3, go to zone 1. Step 4, go to zone 2. So now we're going to put this very simple sticking in zone 2. And what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to work this pattern around the drum kit and break it out of its box. 3, 4. Next is zone 3. Remember, that's floor tom, high tom. And remember, the easiest thing for us to do at first to get accustomed to our ears hearing the sound is just move both hands. A very simplest movement. We can come up with a couple of variations. Remember, all we're worried about is working the system. Zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, now we're on to zone 4. And zone 4 is going to be hi-hat, snare drum. Right, left, doesn't matter. Just pick one, stick with it until you nail it. 3, 4. Notice I'm not concerned with coming up with anything cool or hip. All I'm doing is working a system. The system is going to take me to where I need to be, and it will give me the tools to become creative here in a little while. One more zone, and remember, these are just my zones for teaching that I use to teach my students. I actually just taught this lesson we do live Q&A calls and practical application sessions every week with my students. You can check the link below. I think there's a 14-day free trial still going on. And I just taught this. So we go in depth on some topics. So we're going to go to zone 5 in our assembly line. And remember, do the simplest motion. Move one hand. 3, 4. And now what we did was we worked our sticking out of this box, expanded the box, made a triangle, expanded the box. Like now we can move around the entire kit. I'm going to speed this up a good bit. I'm going to play 2 measures in each zone to let you understand kind of how that works out once we get it all together. 3, 4. Now we've gone 7 steps on this assembly line, right? Now what we want to do is we want to do what's called zonal mixing. So in the middle of this, we go through this sticking 3 times within 1 measure. So I could feasibly mix 3 zones within 1 measure of time, right? So what I want to do is I'm just going to kind of make up, okay, I'm going to mix zone 1, 2, and 3. It'll sound like this. Hey, boom. See how the system led us to that? All we're doing is going step by step on this assembly line. Step 9 is going to be 1 bar of a drum groove, 1 bar of a drum fill using these concepts. Now you may say, why are we doing 1 bar and 1 bar? Usually don't we do 3 bars and 1 bar? Usually we do, but what we want to do is we want to make a very small feedback loop. The problem is that transition between the groove and a drum fill that we've been working on. So what we want to do is smooth that out, and the easiest way to do that is to create a feedback loop where we can hit that problem area as many times as possible in as quick a way as possible, and we give ourselves feedback as we go through it. So what I'm going to be doing is 1 bar at a time, drum fill back into it, and I'm going to be noticing, okay, I drug there, okay, I need to smooth out that transition, treble coming back in, boom, boom, just hitting it, hitting it. The next step is when we'll expand that out a little bit and add more bars of groove. So first what I would suggest is just picking a zone and doing a drum fill in that zone. Let me slow this down a little bit just so you can kind of see what's going on. We'll go to about 80 BPM. 3, 4. What I want you to do is go through all of the zones like that. Make the groove simple. Whenever I teach to the lowest common denominator, and I am the lowest common denominator, I'm the dumbest kid in the room, so I always try to teach to that. And what I need for the groove to be simple so that I can focus on this thing and then come back in. Once we get that down and we've worked through all of the zones, then we can start zonal mixing like we were doing earlier, and we can come up with a kind of a cool drum fill. And again, the sky's the limit with what you can do with this. Be creative. So we'll use the one that I used earlier. 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. Once we're able to do that, the 10th and last step of this assembly line is going to be putting it with 3 bars of time, 1 bar of drum fill so that we're in a more musical setting. We always want to practice towards the music. Hey! 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, some of you are like, okay, Stephen, that's kind of simple for me. I get it. It's a good concept. All right, let's take the assembly line that we just learned. I told you we were going to do a ton of stuff with this sticking. Let's take the second part of that sticking. Remember, I'm thinking of it in 2 chunks. Kick, kick is 1 chunk, and then right, left, right, left, right, left is a 6-note chunk. And that's what we're going to replace. Now we're going to replace it with double strokes. So now the sticking is kick, kick, right, right, left, left, right, right. That doesn't make a difference on the snare drum, but it makes a difference once we start moving the hands. Remember, go back through the assembly line. Learn the sticking with no metronome. Then learn the sticking in step 2 with a metronome and a check pattern. So I'm going to skip to step 2, and this is our sticking. 3, 4. Now we go through steps 3 through 7, the 5 zones. I'm not going to spend the time completely going, but here's zone 2, here's zone 3. I'm going to show you those so that you can see me working through the different zones. And remember, we can come up with all different types of patterns and combinations, and I'll change up some of the combinations as well. With doubles, I love splitting the doubles up between toms, so you could look something like this. So remember, there's all types of options with this. 3, 4. Went through all 5 zones, gave you 2 different options for each zone just so you can see how that works. Again, then we start zonal mixing. So I could start zonal mixing with this. Something like that. So the sky's the limit, really, once you start that. So remember, that's going to be steps 3 through 7. Step 8 of the assembly line is going to be mixing the zones like we were just doing. Step 9, again, we just did it. Add 1 bar of groove, 1 bar of drum fill, and then step 10, 3 bars of groove, 1 bar of drum fill. Okay, now you're like, okay, Steven, still kind of easy. Well, let's get into some 6-note rudiments, because remember, we have 2 chunks, kick, kick, and then a 6-note chunk. Let's change that to a paradiddle diddle. A paradiddle diddle is right, left, right, right, left, left. You see how this assembly line, we built a structure, and now we're using it to work through other stickings by using concepts like zoning of the drum kit, by using concepts like chunking, because we have 2 chunks, we're able to break it up, and using concepts like feedback loops. These are 4 concepts that I teach to my students all of the time. All right, so now we can take the paradiddle diddle, we can add that to the sticking. I'm going to accent the first 2 notes of that. Then we're going to take it through the different zones, all right? So let's take it through the different zones. I'll skip all the other. Remember, step 1, learn the sticking. Step 2, metronome and a check pattern. Step 3, we begin taking it through the zones. 3, 4. Pretty fun, right? What we're doing is we're just beginning to use the system that we created to be more efficient in our practice time. That's why I say, if you have 15 to 20 minutes a day, you can become a fantastic drummer. It's how we practice. The elite in any field practice differently. It's not because they always practice more. They practice differently. This is how they practice. These are the tools. These are the types of things that they use in their practice time. Okay, so and I'm gonna kind of speed up here because I wanna work through some of these different things and show you how deep we can go on just a very simple sticking. Remember, we started with kick, kick, right, left, right, left, right, left. Now let's go to a double paradiddle. Double paradiddle is gonna be right, left, right, left, right, right. First thing we would do is learn the sticking with no metronome. Step 2, learn the sticking with a metronome and a check pattern. Then we go through the zones. Let me show you going through the zones and see you. So when we're on the snare and we're in this box, right, left, right, left, right, left sounds eerily similar to a double paradiddle or a paradiddle diddle. But when we break it out on the drum kit, it starts to sound way different. 3, 4. Then step 8, mixing the zones. Let's go to step 9. I'm kind of fast forwarding through some of these. You can pause the video, go work on it in your own time. Step 9 is going to be 1 bar at a time, 1 bar of the drum fill that you came up with. So let's see what we can come up with. That'll be my drum fill. Hey, Paul! And then we would move to 3 bars of time, 1 bar of a drum fill. Don't skip these steps. I'm skipping them in this lesson just because I want you to understand how deep we can take this very simple concept. Remember, we started way at the low end of the totem pole. Any beginner could do this, but we're getting to a point where intermediate and advanced are begin to be challenged. And then at the end, I really want to show you how you can take this and just kind of go to the moon with it, take it as far as you want to. Okay, so we've come up with 4 different stickings that work. Let's do an inverted double paradiddle. That's going to be a right, left, left, right, right, left. Again, going through the different zones. Let me show you what that sounds like. Hey, Paul. Some of them you'll get to. Now you may have noticed I got a little bit sketchy when I got to zone 2. Some of them you're gonna get to and go, oh, that's kind of weird. So that's why we work the different types of combinations within the zone. Once you get in a zone, work all the combinations. And everything in between. There's tons of options there. And then obviously we're gonna get to zonal mixing. We're gonna get to step 9, which is gonna be a groove with that, and then step 10, which is 3 bars of groove, 1 bar at a time. See how the assembly line does all the work for us? We don't have to think about it. All right, we got another sticking. Let's go to a simpler sticking. How about right, left, left, right, left, left? That one comes up with some cool combinations because the accent falls on the different parts of the beat. So let's go ahead and work that through the zones. Hey, Paul. Step 8, we'll mix the zones. Then let's come up with a drum fill in step 9. 1 bar groove, come up with a drum fill. Hey, Paul! Remember, we're not looking for cool or hip. We're just looking to make this function around the drum kit. Let's reverse that sticking. We're moving on to, now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're at the 7th sticking. I'm looking at my notes there. Let's do right, right, left instead of right, left, left. Let's work through the different zones. 2, 3, 4. That accent pattern lays weird. I started dragging there at the end. Because one of the things we have to understand is sometimes we can play something at a certain tempo, but we can't hear it at that tempo. And what we want to do is we want to work on our hearing. That's what all these zones do. You're like, oh, it's a waste of time, I can play it. Yeah, but what happens if your ear gets caught up because that floor tom's a boom instead of a cat? If that happens, your ear gets caught, you can play it, but you have a breaking point. What we want to do in our practice time is use systems and organize structures and organize ways to work through the material to pinpoint the chinks in our armor and attack them as quickly as possible. So the system should look for those, and that's what the assembly line does. Okay, now, we started at a very beginner sticking. Now we're a little bit more of an advanced with this thing. Let's keep going with this, and let's add some flam rudiments. Let's add a flam accent. A flam accent's gonna be a flam left, right, flam right, left. And some of you are already like, ooh, those flams are gonna sound cool in the drum set. Yes, they are. They sound really cool in the drum set. So that's kind of the magic of this, is we start working them around and we start finding what our ear likes. Let's work through the different zones. 3, 4. Got a little stumbly with that in places because when we play these things, like this one was fun. I'd have to work that one out. Because you're moving within different parts of that. So what I find through exercises like this is I love flams whenever the grace note is on a tom, a lower sound, and the primary note is on a high. Now, let's take another flam rudiment. We're just gonna keep throwing these out because I want you to understand how we can replace these chunks, work them through our assembly line, use feedback loops, work through the zones. You got it. Let's use a Swiss Army triplet. Right, flam right, right, left, flam right, right, left. And some of you are like, Stephen, that sounds just like the flam accent. Right now it does, but when we move it, it doesn't. Here's the flam accent. Swiss triplet. Way different. All right, so let's take that through the zones. 3, 4. All kinds of options. Okay, we got 2 more stickings that I'll just hit on, and then I'll hit on one more concept that will really let you take it much, much further. So let's work through what's called a herta. And here's a power tip. If you accent the left hand whenever you're playing those, it makes this offbeat triplet sound that really makes the herta come out. So. Now we work it through the different zones. 3, 4. Okay, let's go to another hybrid rudiment called the bludgeon. So it's going to be a left-handed flam, double on the right hand. Now that sounds really fun when we put it on a floor tom. Accenting that left hand. Okay, so that's another one that we can learn. The thing is with all of these is the takeaway from this lesson is I want you, and we got one more thing that we're going to do. Takeaway from this lesson is learn the systems. Learn the system, step 1 through 10. Learn that assembly line, and then you can use it with as many stickings as you want to. You can plug this into every one of the rudiments. Let's go to, now we can, after we do that, we can begin to mix the stickings that we just worked through. So let's mix within this one measure, and then I'm going to leave you to your creative whims. Within this one measure, we're going to do single strokes, a paradiddle diddle, and let's do single strokes, a paradiddle diddle, and then right, left, right, left. Okay, and this is a good thing. I'm trying to think through these patterns and lock them together. Now let's go to zone 1 with that. 3, 4. Then we can begin to mix them through different zones, and we can come up with a lot of different concepts. That's kind of fun. Yeah, you know what else is fun? Now that let's just continue down this rabbit hole. Let's move. Now we can move it. You're an advanced player. Great. Let's displace this drum beat, this drum fill. So we're going to start on the and of 1, and we're going to come back in on the and of 1. Okay? So it's going to go 3, 4. That one's hard.